Welcome to the Explainer. So today we're diving into a fascinating hypothetical scenario. It's set in January 2026, and it all starts with a quiet moment in a boring meeting, a moment that completely redraws the map of global power and really challenges a century of American dominance. You know, for over 70 years, we've all understood a pretty simple story. America leads, and its allies, well, they follow. Our quiet, polite neighbor to the north, Canada, has always been there, always answered the call. But that story, according to the source material we're looking at today, has just come to a sudden and honestly a stunning end. Now, these weren't the words of some fiery politician on a debate stage. Nope, they were spoken very politely by a civil servant in what was probably a totally routine, boring meeting in Brussels. And yet, that simple sentence, that was the sound of the entire post-World War II order hitting a brick wall at full speed. So how on earth does a standard bureaucratic meeting become the site of such a massive diplomatic rupture? Let's go inside the room where it all went down. Okay, picture this. The American delegation proposes some standard legal language. The goal is to place Canada's new, very advanced Arctic defense assets under NATO command, which, let's be honest, in a crisis means American command. This has been the way things work for decades. It's just standard procedure. But this time, Canada just said no. So what's so interesting here is what Canada actually built that gave them the confidence to do this. What did they create that sent these shockwaves all the way from the Pentagon to the Oval Office? It really boils down to a trifecta of military independence. First up, a command and control network that is 100% Canadian, no joint authority. Second, they've got a brand new constellation of surveillance satellites that are Canadian-owned and operated. And third, and this is a big one, a fleet of armed Arctic drones that they developed with European partners, not American contractors. So the key takeaway here is this. Canada has essentially built a separate, private internet for the entire Arctic. And it's one where the United States military just doesn't have the master password. It's a declaration of sovereignty, but it's written in hardware and in code. But you know, a move like this doesn't just happen out of nowhere. The source material argues pretty forcefully that the roots of this really dramatic shift trace directly back to the White House and what it calls a profound strategic miscalculation. According to the source, Canada was just looking south at months of political chaos and threats from its closest ally, including, believe it or not, talk of annexation, and they just made a really stark calculation about their own security down the road. And this right here captures the psychological earthquake of the whole thing. This is that moment when your most trusted partner decides you've become too unpredictable, maybe too dangerous to rely on anymore. And that's a loss of trust that no military budget in the world can fix. But okay, why the Arctic? Why is this remote, icy landscape so critical? Why is this the stage where a 70-year-old alliance could actually begin to fracture? Well, as all that polar ice melts, the Arctic is completely transforming. It's opening up new shipping routes that could be worth trillions of dollars. It's exposing these vast, untapped reserves of oil, gas, and all the rare earth minerals that power our modern world. It is, for all intents and purposes, the new global frontier. And in this new frontier, the United States is falling dangerously behind. Russia has been militarizing its Arctic coast for years and has a fleet of 40 icebreakers. China, which now calls itself a near-Arctic state, is pouring in money. The US, it has 2. So let's talk about the consequences, because Canada's move here creates this cascade of crises for America's entire global military and intelligence posture. This is a fundamental change. I mean, the US military is built on this assumption of total information awareness. Now, to see what's happening in its own backyard, in North American airspace and waters, it has to ask Ottawa for permission. That creates a state of dependency for a superpower that, as the source points out, doesn't do dependency. And this strikes right at the heart of the Five Eyes, which is the most intimate intelligence-sharing alliance in history. It was built on this idea of a constant, automatic fire hose of data flowing between all 5 partners. Everybody sees what everybody else sees pretty much instantly. But Canada has just introduced this radical new concept into the mix, data sovereignty. Now, the raw data from their new Arctic sensors, it goes to Ottawa first. They get to decide what to share and when they share it. They've essentially put a valve on that fire hose, and it's left the U.S. intelligence community suddenly blind in one eye. Oh, and then there's the money. You can't forget the money. American defense giants spent millions on what the industry actually calls Canadian capture, basically assuming they'd lock up these massive contracts. Instead, Canada partnered with European firms, avoiding being locked into one supplier and setting a frankly terrifying precedent for the entire American military-industrial complex. So you can see, this is way bigger than a single defense system. The source material frames this as a fundamental realignment of power, not just in the Arctic, but in the entire Western Hemisphere. For 70 years, the deal was simple. Think back to things like the Dew Line in the 1950s, that network of radar stations across the Arctic. The arrangement was Canada provides the strategic real estate, and America provides the technology and the leadership. That deal is now officially dead. What we're really witnessing here is the first serious challenge to the Monroe Doctrine in over a century. Canada has rejected this long-held U.S. policy that the Americas are its sphere of influence, and they didn't do it with a diplomatic note. They did it with billions of dollars of sovereign military capability. The superpower that maybe took loyalty for granted is learning a hard lesson that respect isn't a given. It has to be earned. The quiet neighbor isn't so quiet anymore, and the global race for the top of the world is really just getting started. So the question now isn't just about control. It's about what happens when your closest friends decide to build their own future without you.